Excellent. All right, we're going to get going. If everybody could sit down, that would be great. Take your seats. So we're going to start this this town hall meeting tonight. And forum. We're very, very excited to be holding it. So I'm Elliot Richardson. I'm the co-CEO of the Small Business Advocacy Council. Block, I was wondering if there's any way we could turn the music off. Thank you so much. Nobody wants me to start dancing. So listen, we're here tonight to talk about the budget or the lack of a budget in Illinois. The fact that, we've gone 8 months without having a budget. We lose $33 million every day that there is none. What we're going to call for tonight is for our leaders to govern, to pass a responsible budget, and to make the structural reforms that will help empower the entire state and revive the Illinois economy. Most importantly, we need them to govern and lead. The impact of this budget stalemate is really killing lots of folks. It's hurting small businesses, college students, nonprofits, and thank you for those that are tuning in on the live stream tonight. We know it's hurting a lot of you as well. So those are my opening remarks. We're going to have a slew of people come up and just tell you how the budget impasse has impacted them. This event's going to be moderated by our incredible partners from Reboot Illinois. So Madeline, Matt, and Madison, please give them a round of applause. Reboot is an incredible organization, a media outlet that is nonpartisan, tells it like it is, and it's where I check my news every day about what's going on in the state and the city, which unfortunately ruins my day some of the time, but I don't blame them for that. You're going to hear about how the budget impasse is impacting business organizations and nonprofits and business owners from the people on the stage. We're going to have a forum where we talk about how we can make things better and get engaged as small business owners and community activists, and then we're going to take your questions. So with no further ado, again, thank you so much, and I'm going to introduce Madeline. Here she is. Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks for coming out on a pretty cold evening after, I'm sure, a long, hard day of being frustrated by the lack of a budget in Illinois. We really wanted, Elliot and I, when we first talked about having this event, to do something beyond venting. I'm sure you're going to hear a lot of venting this evening, and we encourage that. We know everybody's pretty frustrated. But we wanted to also make this about taking action, and your presence here tonight is the first step of that. So you should be proud of yourselves for that, and I thank you for doing that and coming here this evening. But we also encourage everyone to use the power of social media to let it be known that you are not happy about the situation in Illinois and that it is hurting all of us. So we would like you to use the hashtag ILBudgetNow as you're listening to speakers this evening, and encourage everyone you know, family, friends, neighbors, enemies, business competitors, to do the same thing. And several times throughout the evening, we're also going to kind of walk you through a tool that we have that will help you. We call it Sound Off. And Madison is going to help me show you how to use it very quickly. If you prefer, you can text the word reboot to this number, 27126, and it will take you on your mobile device directly to our Sound Off tool, which looks like this. And as you can see, we've got a number of issues there that we have voiced our editorial opinion on. One of them is about the Illinois budget and the lack thereof. And you can see it there, and the destructive Illinois budget impasse. If you type in your address, Madison's going to type in the Reboot Illinois address. We're in the West Loop at 833 West Jackson if you'd like to come see us sometime. Our tool will tell you who your state rep and your state senator are. It will also list the governor and the 4 top legislative leaders who are keeping a stranglehold on all of us right now. It gives you a little bit of background. Madison's not going to go click back. There you go. Gives you a little bit of background on the topic at hand and some links to some information about it on the Reboot Illinois website. And then if you click that Find Your Representatives button again, Madison, and if you click the Notify Your Officials bar there at the bottom, you can see the message that we've pre-written for you. If you click inside that box because you don't like something that we've said or you happen to disagree with us, we want you to speak to your elected officials whether you happen to agree with our view or not. So you can click inside that box and revise the message as you see fit. Once you hit that Notify Your Officials button, it's going to go to your individual state rep and state senator, the governor, and those 4 legislative leaders' offices all at once. So in about 4 clicks, you can literally sound off about the state budget impasse. So we're going to keep reminding you to do that throughout the evening, and we hope you'll spread the word about that. It's a pretty nifty tool we've created to help people take back ownership of our government. And again, the Twitter hashtag is Illinois Budget Now. So we are going to hear from these wonderful people sitting on the stage next to me. They're each going to take just a few minutes, 3 to 5, to tell you a little bit about how they've been hurt by the lack of a state budget in Illinois. And we'll start with Jason Tremblay, who's a board member of the Greater O'Hare Association. Here's Jason.
Appreciate the opportunity to speak here today. And I probably speak for everyone up here that I wish I didn't have to be up here, but obviously appreciate the forum with which to discuss this very important issue. And I'm here really in 2 capacities. My first capacity is on behalf of the GOA Regional Business Association, where I've been involved for about 10 years. I'm currently serving as of counsel to that organization, and it's a great business organization. They represent approximately 800 small, medium-sized businesses throughout northern Illinois and about 90 communities. A few facts that came to light through this association. The budget impasse has added over, from what I see, $6 billion of debt to the budget. Illinois is going to face $10 to $12 billion, that's with a B, in unpaid bills at the end of this fiscal year, which is in June. Make no mistake about it, Illinois taxpayers, whether it's myself, you, businesses, residents throughout Illinois, are going to pay for that. They're going to pay for it with probably a huge income tax increase. Again, both on businesses and on residents. I've heard up to 8%. Just went down, it's probably going to go up if this isn't resolved. And so therefore, it's no wonder why businesses throughout Illinois are leaving, residents are leaving. A statistic that I just saw from United Van Line says that Illinois currently is the state number 3 on the list of residents leaving the state. If that income tax would come in, you guarantee it'll be first on that list. It's certainly a list we do not want to be on. So also with the Greater O'Hare Association, we have many members. And I want to talk about one member that actually I'm familiar with called the Kenneth Young Center. It's obviously a not-for-profit that serves many disadvantaged and individuals with need. In 2015, Kenneth Young Center celebrated 45 years of providing critical, life-saving services to over 27,000 individuals, ranging from 4 years old to 104 years old. The majority of its services are impacted by state funding, and of course this budget impasse has significantly amplified those problems. As a result, this year in 2016, the budget was reduced by $500,000. If you can imagine what type of impact that might have on this particular agency. They completely defunded psychiatric care as a result. This profoundly affects not only them, but their employees, as well as all the individuals that they help. They're navigating in uncharted territories right now. I've had communications with them. They're fulfilling their obligations to the state, but they're doing it with approximately $800,000 in money that's owed to them, with a promise at some point that they'll be paid. When? They don't know. So as a result, and just as one testimonial from the GOA, Regional Business Association, we urge our elected officials to, on both sides, to make the responsible choice and to pass a fair and equitable budget. Now that's my first hat. My second hat is a labor and employment attorney. I am a partner with the law firm of Arnstein and Lair. I'm the chair of our labor and employment group, and in that capacity, I represent a lot of companies. Be amazed at how many calls that I've received in the last 3 months of businesses that are impacted by this. Just 2 weeks ago, I had a long-term client, another social service agency, call me and said they're not getting money. What are our options? Their options are laying off half their staff, everybody taking across the board a budget, a salary cut, furloughs, tapping into reserves. All of these decisions have significant legal impacts. Rest assured, unfortunately, there were a lot of people that had to be let go as a result of this. So in the end, the bottom line is many good employees at these agencies, whether it's Kenneth Young, whether it's this other agency that I've talked about, are going to lose a lot of good employees. From a labor employment perspective, it's insurmountable. And of course, that strains the state even more. So again, as a business attorney and seeing how this affects many companies throughout Illinois, I also personally urge the state to pass a responsible budget as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. You get an A+ for keeping it to the allotted time.
5 minutes? All right. It's hard to keep an attorney.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. All right. Again, hashtag Illinois Budget Now. Seriously, it works. Give it a shot. Next, we're going to hear from Sarah, and Sarah, I apologize, Dinges from, she's the CEO and president of Uptown United, one of the other wonderful organizations trying to do good work in this state with no help from the state. And take it away, Sarah.
Thank you, and another thank you to SBAC and Reboot Illinois for bringing us together tonight to address this important topic. My name is Sarah Dinges. I'm the president and CEO of Uptown United, Uptown's economic and community development organization, and business partners, the Chamber for Uptown. Uptown is a densely populated, diverse, historic community on Chicago's north side. It is home to 52,000 people, over 1,000 businesses, and 98 nonprofit organizations. Collectively, our businesses and nonprofits put 13,500 people to work each day in this state and in this city. Each day that passes without a state budget in Illinois is one more day Uptown loses social services, employees, customers, and business revenue. Each day that passes means more layoffs at our local nonprofit agencies, having an immediate negative impact on our small business community. Each day that passes means that the 23,000 students and faculty that go to Truman College every day have an uncertain future. In 2014, our organization commissioned a study with the Center for Tax and Budget Accountability to look at the impact of the nonprofit sector in Uptown. And the key result was that the nonprofit sector is a main driver in our local economy, employing 13.5% of our workforce, more than 4,000 people, and occupying 300,000 square feet of commercial space. Our research indicates that nonprofit employees spend $195,000 a week at other Uptown businesses. That's approximately $10 million annually. The loss of these workers as a result of the state budget impasse greatly impacts the local coffee shop, the lunchtime cafe, the unique retailer, as well as hundreds of other businesses in Uptown. You can read more about our economic impact study at our website, uptownunited.org. Uptown state legislators, Representative Greg Harris and Senator Heather Staines, have fought tirelessly for a budget, but it's not enough. we need leaders throughout the state to recognize the impact this stalemate is having, not only on our service providers, but on small businesses and workers from various industries. This evening, we join the collective call to action to invest in neighborhoods and business communities such as Uptown by approving a state budget. Thank you.
You know, Madeline, if I could just say something really fast.
Yeah.
You know, if you hear the passion in Sarah's voice, and if our legislators had that type of passion about trying to get the job done, there'd be a budget already. So thank you so much for being out here.
Vic Maselli, are you, all right, excellent, how are you? Vic Maselli from Displays Office Equipment we're going to hear from next. Please give him a welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me here. I just, you know, I'm one of the people, part of SBAC that always has to speak out real loud, I guess, and that's why they had me come here. But, you know, our company, the Displays Office Equipment, we've been in Illinois for over 60 years. Family-owned company. I'm second generation. And what's nice about our company is we do business with all kinds of businesses here in the state of Illinois. I get to deal with attorneys, I get to deal with bankers, manufacturing, restaurants, you name the business, they use our technology. And I get to meet with business owners, and we talk about what are their issues, what problems they have with their company, and how can I help? And during that conversation, I run into that there's a lot of issues that this state has. You know, we have some of the highest property taxes in the country. We have more fees than just about any other state in the union. It seems like every time we turn around, we're getting charged for this or that. Your tolls keep on going up. We have double tax on our gas. I mean, you name it, it's expensive to be here in Illinois. And as a business owner, it's tough to stay here and work and try to generate income to pay all these bills and to support this state. And as I talk to these business owners, a lot of them are getting tired. They're frustrated that right now we have, you know, a standoff. Nothing's getting done. Everybody doesn't want to talk to each other. They just want to sit there and cross their hands and say, I'm not going to move. And this is ridiculous because us as business owners, we know we need to talk, we need to negotiate, and we need to move forward. And I wish our leaders down in Springfield would take examples from us as business owners of how to run a business and how to run a state. And, you know, I've been down to Springfield, and the line they always tell me is, you know, small business, you guys are the backbone of our economy. You're the backbone of our state. Well, you want to know something? Your backbone's broken. And in order to stand up and fix this, you guys got to get together and start talking. And that's what needs to get done. And I've had enough. My neighbors had enough. It's time that the state gets together and move forward. So, you know, I leave you with this, that it's time to stand up. And I appreciate everybody coming here and voicing their opinion because that's what it takes. Thank you.
Thanks, Vic. Great way to close because we at Reboot Illinois were founded with the notion that more of us need to start speaking up, and that's the only way things are going to get better if we really get together and start demanding it. And so that is one of the reasons why we invited all of you here this evening. So we hope you'll keep doing that and keep spreading the word because the more of us who decide that we want to be heard, the better our chances of actually accomplishing some change together. So thanks, Vic. And next up, we will hear from Steve Banke, founder and CEO of 3 Points LLC.
Good evening. Thanks for having me here. My name is Steve Banke. I'm the founder and CEO of 3 Points. We're an IT services company that serves businesses throughout the Chicagoland area. As the CEO of 3 Points, I'm very fortunate to have well over 100 small businesses as clients of mine and a wonderful, friendly competitor in Vic Maselli. I also get to meet with lots of business owners, and I hear a lot of the same things that Vic hears from my clients. You know, they're holding off on purchases. They had planned to do things with us this year, but they're not going to do them now. Or they're holding off hiring. They're not going to hire any more people. Or they're closing their doors. We've heard this from a number of clients in the last couple of months, particularly those in certain industries. Or as Vic said, they're absolutely leaving the state. They're done. And it doesn't take too much to cross the border into Indiana or to Wisconsin and to still be a business here in Illinois. Some of my clients are getting hurt harder than others are. The two that are getting hurt most that are my clients are first nonprofits that have any kind of state funding whatsoever. Most of these organizations already operate on a shoestring budget, and so every dollar that's taken out of their pocket is a major impact to their bottom lines. We're also seeing, though, a major impact in those who are serving statewide construction. And so those organizations that are architectural firms or general contractors or those with trades that are delivering services to the state, building roads or repairing bridges that are in dire need of repair throughout the state, are pulling back. They're not getting paid, and they're laying off people. And it's actually getting kind of scary out there from what we're seeing. I also serve as a capacity as an executive member at the Small Business Advocacy Council. We are the group of people who get together and try and steer the Advocacy Council, in the direction that will help small businesses. And in that capacity, I also get to meet with a lot of business owners that are not my clients. And I've heard a lot of other interesting stories from these folks that a couple I'd like to share with you tonight. So many of you may know this or not, but many of you may not, that the state is no longer sending reminders for your license plate renewals because there's no budget. So if your license plate is expired, don't expect the state to let you know. It will be the Illinois State Police who will let you know. Also, we just heard that Chicago State University is going to be a major restructuring very soon because of this budget impacting them. And when I say major, I've heard that it's going to be, in many ways, impacting absolutely every single student, teacher, and administrator at Chicago State University. Right behind that, we understand that Eastern University has already been hit with many changes because of the budget impasse, and that they are going to be one of the most at-risk universities. So if you have a child or know a person with a child in the university system, they should get involved in this fight because they're about to be impacted very significantly. So why are we having this fight? Like, what's really going on? And I have my own opinions about it, but I think the first thing I talk about is, what's going on here in Illinois. It's pretty clear that from a state perspective, we're almost last in everything. And it's sad. We have crushing debt. We have an unfunded liability in pensions and unfunded liabilities in Medicare that the state is just not addressing in any way, shape, or form. And it's my belief that the leadership has to come together and really do two things. Yeah, the budget's a big problem. We need a budget. We need a budget that we can afford. But we also need reforms because the state got into this situation because of the way it's been conducting itself for the last 40 years. And there's not a lot that our citizens can do about it. So the first thing we really need is fair maps. We don't have fair maps today. We have gerrymandering. And that means politicians decide what district we're going to vote in. That system has proved to fail us time and time again. So fair maps, I think, is a very big deal. Second, we need leadership term limits. If our leaders aren't going to come together, they should have to go. I mean, that's a basic problem we have, is our leadership is not talking. Third, we obviously need pension and Medicaid reform. We need real reform that's not going to pass an election cycle and then get thrown out by the Illinois State Supreme Court. So if nothing gets done, right, what we're experiencing now is small. It's about to get much worse, much, much worse. And I also, as a member of the SBAC, get to travel to Springfield from time to time and speak to legislators. And what I hear from legislators is the same thing that probably a lot of you might think when you're going to hear from your legislator, and perhaps why you're not calling them. That is, they don't have any power. They can't make a difference. Leadership has to make a difference. At the SBAC, we have a different approach, and that is that we want our rank and file legislators to get together and go after leadership and force them to pass a budget and force them to institute fair maps and to force them to institute other reforms that this state needs to become a viable long-term organization. So my request to you tonight is to do that, is to contact your legislators and say, listen, we get you can't change leadership's mind, but what you can do is get together. Get together, talk amongst yourself, and bring that message to leadership. Thank you very much.
Great message. Thank you very much. You know, I'm sure most of you are aware the president was in Springfield today. Did you listen? We're nonpartisan. I don't know whether you like Obama or hate Obama, but he talked about fair maps, and he talked about the need for compromise, and he admitted his own failings in that regard, and called out both sides of the aisle for their shortcomings and failure and lack of a spine in creating a better politics, and really said that compromise is not a nasty word. So maybe that will have some effect today. Let's hear from Scott Baskin. Is that who we just heard from? I'm sorry, I'm losing my place.
You can't confuse Steve and Scott.
Well, no one was moving as I was speaking, so I thought maybe I... Scott Baskin, also an executive board member from the Small Business Advocacy Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight. As was said, I'm a member of the SBAC board and on the executive committee. I'm a retired business owner in Chicago. I'm also very interested in education. Last night, I attended the Northside College Prep Local School Council meeting. I'm an elected member of the LSC at Northside and the finance chair. Northside is a Chicago public high school. It's the #1 rated public high school in the state of Illinois. It was recently listed in the top 10 public high schools in the nation by Newsweek, so we're not last in everything. Yesterday afternoon, Northside's principal was told that she needed to reduce her budget for the second semester, which starts in a few weeks, by $218,000. On an annual basis, that's an 8% decrease. That's on top of an 8.5% budget decrease that started at the beginning of the school year, which necessitated the laying off of the school's only librarian, laying off of part-time teaching positions, eliminating all funds for supplemental tutoring during the year, reducing an office staff which runs a school of 1,000 students to 3 people, and requiring the principal to teach a class to avoid cutting an upper-level English class. At this point, there's nothing else to do except to decide whether to keep a math class, an art class, a science class, or computer science class. Every public school in Chicago is facing these issues, and all state colleges and universities are facing similar issues. Thousands of students are waiting for their state scholarships to be funded right now. Both sides of the aisle in Springfield acknowledge that education is underfunded in the state, but the solution is caught up in the budget stalemate. This is an issue that's not only devastating to our kids, it is one of the most important long-term issues facing small businesses. Schools make neighborhoods. Neighborhoods allow small businesses to grow, to hire, and to prosper. Schools educate the future workforce of the city. Without an educated workforce, Chicago cannot attract the Fortune 500 companies or the high-tech startups that are needed to grow the economy and create the well-paying job holders who in turn support the small businesses throughout the city. It is time to end the budget stalemate. It is time to address the funding issue for our schools. It is time for all sides to make a list of what they can do, not what they won't do. We cannot wait any longer. We are destroying our schools and our local economy. Thank you.
And it could very well be all those children and our grandchildren who will be getting the bills for all the debt we've piled up over the past several decades. So thank you, Scott. Next, let's hear from one of my favorite panelists, because he often lets me republish his blogs on rebootillinois.com, Mark Glennon, from Managing Director of 9th Street Advisors. Mark?
Thank you for having me, Madeline. And I actually wear two hats. I also run a news blog focused on economics and the fiscal problems of the state. So I'm going to give you two perspectives. First, from that perspective, do not confuse the problem of not having a budget with the problem, which is that we don't have as much revenue as we have in expenses. Let me give you some, you got to bear with me on a few numbers here. It's not that complicated. We are losing money at the rate of $6.2 billion right now. We're going to worsen our unfunded our liabilities by $6.2 billion at the current rate. That's already giving account to the fact that all these things that you're hearing about tonight are underfunded. So you would need $6.2 billion more in revenue just to keep us even with what we're doing right now. Well, reinstating the temporary tax increase would be about $5 billion. Now, also, that $6.2 billion does not include the fact that we're underfunding the pensions grossly. This isn't talked about very much. You sometimes see politicians bragging that they're making all the contributions required for the pensions. They're not, and this is not a matter of opinion. This is straight out of the actuarial tables. There's another $3 billion that we're underfunding the pensions, and that's assuming they meet their assumptions. These phony assumptions about 7.5% returns that you hear about often and the like. The real numbers could be as much as 3 times worse. That's what Nobel Prize-winning economist here at the University of Chicago, Eugene Fama, says. So we are not remotely close to having a solution at hand that can be solved just by saying, come on, you guys, get together and solve the problem, compromise or something. If you have a compromise, there's still going to be a lot of these cuts that are in place, and you're still going to have a tax increase. Now, further, don't look at this in a vacuum. That's a common mistake as well. As we've heard, many of these problems are overlapping problems of other jurisdictions. Where we stand tonight, there's, I think, 6, 7 other jurisdictions, the Metropolitan Water Sewer District, the CPS, the Park District, all that. They're all grossly insolvent. They all have badly underfunded pensions. So all this has to be looked at together. So you really have to, I think, when you communicate with your legislators, put up a specific idea. I have my ideas about how it ought to be solved. We're not going to go into that tonight because that gets political. Some people see it as a revenue problem. Others see it as an expense problem. I personally think it's a combination of both, but it's going to take dramatic, radical changes to fix this. We fundamentally have a model of government that is broken. We are not producing the jobs, revenue, and growth that we need to meet the obligations we've made. Now, quickly on the second hat that I wear, I'm a technology guy. I do consulting work for young companies, mostly on the finance side. The technology sector is actually doing pretty well, as you know, generating a lot of good jobs, good paying jobs, and it's growing here. Really because they're just not reliant on the government. Their message to government has long been, and I've been doing lobbying chores for them for 19 years now, their message has been, just stay away from us. And they haven't been relying on government money. So that's part of the reasons. There are other reasons why it's thriving as well, but that's one of them. With 2 exceptions, there are 2 problems. One, the university side of technology where they do R&D obviously is affected by the university funding situation, and that's a challenge. But secondly is the flight of wealthy individuals. Madeline, you guys had an article about the number of departures of millionaires. I forget how, it's a very high number. But especially the really ultra-high net worth individuals who fund transactions. And that's where I'm talking about people with serious money where they have 2 or 3 homes already. And they are the angel investors that fuel the technology community. They're leaving. They're often gone. It's hard to track them down because they're at their other homes because they've changed residences. This is an epidemic. And if you talk to financial planners for those folks, they tell you that, almost all of them have left or are planning on changing their residence, and that means they're gone for half the year. So we have big problems, and I encourage you, especially as I say, to keep in mind that solving the budget problem isn't quite the issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Next, we're going to hear from one of those younger generation people who are threatened by all of this in a very direct way. Very pleased to be joined by Mercedes Jones, who's the student government president in the undergraduate program at the University of Illinois.
Hi, everybody. So you have heard a little bit from the other speakers about how this kind of impacts the university system. The state budget crisis has affected not only students at UIC, but throughout the entire state of Illinois. Chicago State University is not just doing restructuring, it's threatening to close its doors come March 1st, and that's something that's terrifying. Higher education is not something to be neglected, it's something that should be supported and encouraged. However, our legislators are seemingly indifferent to the plight that so many students face on a daily basis. In many instances, students were unable to enroll for classes at institutions, and several other students who are enrolled now are on the hook for the MAP grants that they owe to the university if they are being subsidized by MAP. If those appropriations don't come through, those students have to pay those before they can do anything else at the university. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about one of the individuals on my campus. She's a senior. She's been on MAP grant for 4 years, and the rest of her tuition is paid for by merit scholarships. And actually, one of those scholarships at our university is called the President's Award Program. It's also underfunded by $2 million. So she alone has trouble getting the money from that scholarship, and now she has to worry about the MAP grants. She's applied to graduate and professional programs, but if MAP is cut significantly or not appropriated, she will have to wait until she can pay for that MAP grant in order to receive her diploma, to understand if she's been accepted into these universities, because now she is technically without a degree because the university will not give it to her without her paying that MAP grant. And that may affect where she can enroll, when she can enroll, and may delay her going into these programs for a year, maybe two, depending how much of the MAP grant she owes. For students who are not graduating, they could find their accounts on hold and they would not be able to enroll, and that's a problem come fall 2016. So the dire situation is a crisis that not only affects the student tuition, but also the services that they receive at the university. Universities across Illinois are being forced to cut their expenses. That means cutting cultural support networks. That means cutting student org funding. That means cutting student learning services like tutoring. Also at UIC alone, we employ 2,821 student employees. And that means that this funding issue not only affects their tuition, but now their livelihood, where they get their money, how they pay their bills, their rent, their groceries. And this is something that students have to deal with on a daily basis. I believe I speak for all UIC students and every student in the Illinois education system when we plead with our legislators to understand the importance of funding education and to pass a budget so that students can begin enrolling in school and finish their education and move forward in their lives. Thank you.
Great job, Mercedes. I hope that you will stick around and give Illinois a chance. We need more great young men and women like Mercedes. Lastly, we're going to hear in this segment of our town hall mobilization tonight from Mike Kavanaugh, who's also a co-CEO of the Small Business Advocacy Council. Mike?
Thank you, Madeline. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and thanks for all the people on the live stream. My message is more of, what are we doing at the SBAC, and how can everybody here and our listeners at the different watch parties live streaming, how can they help? So we've heard some different testimonies from different age groups, from different aspects of the business and political community. Some statistics, the stuff we did rank high in was number 3 for people moving out of the state, so that's not what we want to rank high in. I looked up a similar statistic today, the U.S. Census Bureau, on how many people left Illinois from June of 2014 to June of 2015. And Illinois led all 50 states in population loss. The net number was over 100,000 statewide for the first time ever. Every other state in the Midwest showed a net population increase. So that kind of touches upon what Mark was saying about a revenue problem. You know, we can encourage our legislators to get together and pass a budget. We've got 1,200 members in the SBAC. There's over 80 different chambers and associations that represent some of those numbers, that 1,200. Their members, the businesses, the employees at those businesses, we stretch into the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people that influence. So when I look back to the first early days of the SBAC, and a lot of those people are in the room today, Elliot, member number 1, Jim Scordo, Steve Banke, Melissa Rizzi, John Gotchel, the people that helped grow this organization are all here this evening. And with all the influence and everything that we've done, we still aren't getting through. So what we ask is bring people out to these events, spread the word that we are serious, and that it takes time to build bridges. Getting things done take resources, but we want everybody to know that the SBAC stands true to our beliefs that we are all in, and we aren't going to spin anything. And we would love to have everybody here consider joining the SBAC and really help us revive not only the Illinois economy, but the American dream here in Illinois. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. You know, you've heard from, I'm going to ask you guys to join the rest of the crowd while I vamp here for a minute. You've heard from a lot of different perspectives this evening, and everybody's kind of touched on it, but I just kind of want to draw it all together one more time. All of these different problems that you've heard about tonight are intertwined, and our future is tangled up in all of it, because if we have more people leaving the state than coming into the state, that means that once we actually confront the revenue problem, it's going to be that much more costly on those of us who remain. And we are certainly not encouraging our younger generations to stay here at this point in time, right? So that also adds to the problem. And, you know, not enough of us understand that this is a problem and that we have the power to do something about it because, you know, they're busy taking their kids to ballet or to band practice or trying to stay afloat in their own small businesses. And so we all need to be kind of the evangelists who take this message out and get other people involved, because as we've seen lately, if you do get enough people involved and apply enough pressure, things change. Police superintendents leave. I'm talking, of course, about Laquan McDonald. That's one example, and the mayor is still feeling the heat and the pressure from that situation. We can apply that same heat and pressure if enough of us get together on our lawmakers, and if they feel threatened, they will go to the governor and the 4 legislative leaders and put pressure on them to get something done. Matt and I have been around Illinois government and politics for more than we'd like to admit. This is Matt Dietrich over here. Say hello, Matt. More than 50 years. And we know that this is all driven by politics, and we are both hearing that this whole thing might not get resolved until well after the November election. By then, Chicago State University will be closed. Eastern Illinois University, my alma mater, will probably be closed. You know, what are we doing to our homes? It doesn't make any sense, and it's our government and up to us to fight it. So, again, I'm going to ask you to use the hashtag Illinois Budget Now, or to text Reboot to the number here at the bottom of this, at the top of this placard, 27126. And keep doing that long after you've left here. You can also stay apprised on all of these activities and developments and lack of activities in Springfield by signing up for the Reboot Illinois daily tip-off email. If you'd like to do that, see Matt or me or Madison after we get done this evening and give us your business card, and we'll be happy to sign you up. For the next segment of this evening's presentation, I'm going to toss out some questions to Elliot and the two wonderful women sitting on either side of him. Funny how you had that worked out, Elliot.
My wife's in the audience.
So, anything you want to tell her? No. So we have with Elliot Amara Enya, who is the Executive Director of the Austin Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for being here. And Nellie Vasquez Rowland, did I say that? Rowland, okay. President and co-founder of a Safe Haven Foundation. So I'll take it easy on you to start off. Nellie, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your organization and what you're up to and what you're upset about this whole situation in the state of Illinois.
Okay. Well, first of all, I also want to weigh in and thank you all for putting this forum together. It's so important and crucial that, you know, all the different stakeholders, the business leaders, the academics, and the nonprofits get together and speak, you know, on the issues and the challenges that we're facing, because at the end of the day, they affect all of us. Again, my name is Nellie Vasquez Rowland. I'm co-founder of an organization called A Safe Haven Foundation. My husband and I started A Safe Haven 21 years ago. We left our careers in finance to start this because we started looking at this issue of the budget, believe it or not, 21 years ago, and we were paying attention to where the money was going in terms of social services, and noticed that what we were doing with the resources that we were giving to our leadership and our government was really being directed in places that we felt there wasn't really a big return on investment for anybody. So we started to think about what would need to happen to help people that are in crisis in a way that would connect the dots and get them back into jobs and permanent housing. And today we have an organization that is considered an anchor organization that provides housing, treatment, job training, job placement. We have social business enterprises, and we also have 40 developments that provide different levels of housing. So we actually call it a vertically integrated ecosystem that takes people from homelessness to jobs to permanent housing. So that's what we're doing.
Wonderful, thank you. Elliot, would you like to jump in and talk about what you'd like to see more people doing to put pressure on their legislators to get something done?
Sure, I'll take a second to do that. And I know people have spoken from the SBAC, and I just want to mention, after we speak, everybody who spoke today will have the opportunity to answer some questions.
Right.
So I think that will be great. You know, listen,
Can I interrupt you for one
Yeah.
second? Because you just reminded me that at all of your seats, we gave you a pen and an index card. And we'd love it if you would jot down some questions or comments and then pass them down the aisle. Matt's going to collect them, and we'll kind of sift through them once we get done with this and have a discussion.
Thank you. You know, Mark hit the nail on the head to some extent when he spoke. This is not a problem that just happened this year in Illinois. We have structural problems in this state. But what we need to expect is for our political leaders and our politicians to try to solve them. And the SBAC and our vast array of organizations and business groups that have had enough, that are coming together to demand that our politicians begin to do what they were sent to do, which is govern and lead. What we want, what they want, is exactly that, to stop the nonsense and for our legislators to do what they were elected to do, try to solve the problems. Every problem may not be solved immediately, but God, they owe it to us and the business owners and the nonprofits in the state to at least try, and to realize that politics is not a game for the small business owner on Main Street. Politics closes their business. Politics is not a game for the nonprofits that lose their funding. It puts them out of business. And what we're going to demand and get more and more stringent about demanding with our good friends at Reboot and other media outlets is an end to the nonsense. And I hope we're able to talk about that. And we've got lots of ideas about how to get that done. But none of those ideas go anywhere unless you have people who want to listen, who want to get into the game, who want to govern, compromise, and lead. And it's time for that in Springfield.
Thank you.
You're next.
So Nellie, tell us about, Amara, tell us about the Austin Chamber of Commerce and how your members have been struggling because of the budget impasse, and your thoughts about how we can increase the pressure on lawmakers to get something done.
Well, so first I want to thank all of you for being here today. I definitely want to thank the Small Business Advocacy Council that has been a really good partner, a helpful partner in the work that we try to do on a daily basis and for putting this town hall together. I do represent the Austin Chamber of Commerce. We are an organization that represents a couple of hundred businesses located on the west side of Chicago in the Austin community, which is the largest community area in the city of Chicago. Also has the largest population in the city of Chicago. We have recently expanded, so our operations now extend beyond Austin to East and West Garfield Park, and that's something that's happened this year in particular because of a need that was identified with serving the business community in other neighborhoods. And so there's a gap in services to small business owners in the East and West Garfield Park community. So we have taken it upon ourselves to expand our operations to address that need. The state of the budget has really affected many of the businesses in the Austin community on a number of fronts. And so one is just the notion that the small businesses in our community serve several functions. So in addition to hiring locally, we put a lot of emphasis on investing in the community. We recognize that small businesses aren't just there to take our money, they're there as partners for community-based organizations, they're partners for our local churches, they're partners for our schools. They partner with us in many aspects of community life. And so we see small businesses as our neighbors. And so that's the approach that we take. And so one of the things that has affected a number of the small businesses is every summer we have a summer youth employment program. And through that program, it gives young people an opportunity to get on-the-job experience, exposure to the world of work. It also is a service to small business owners who, for a few months during the summer, wouldn't mind having a few extra hands on deck to help with their day-to-day operations. So it's really a win-win. Well, that program had typically been funded by the state of Illinois. As an organization, we also participated in that program. We had received about $150,000, of which we did not receive any of that funding this summer, and many of the organizations that we work with also did not receive that funding this past summer. And so we ended up we took it upon ourselves to do our own fundraising so that we can support employment, but it's a major hit that many of our small businesses took. The economic effect of the state budget is, I think it was mentioned earlier by one of the other speakers earlier this evening, is that it's not just the small businesses. There's an ecosystem that exists around small businesses, of which they are the core. And so in the nonprofit sector, you have to see when people are getting laid off. And we've had organizations that we have personally seen, nonprofits, but even as a chamber, we work with nonprofits who have laid off several members of their staff. And so when you think in terms of the economy and how that multiplier effect, when you're not having those individuals who have the pocket money to patronize small businesses. And so we're seeing that at a very large scale. Now, in more challenged communities, that effect is even more pronounced because they've already been struggling with the lack of investment in those communities to begin with. And so now as we're seeing more layoffs, we're seeing more individuals who are finding themselves dropping from the middle class to low income, who now have to rely on state assistance. And so this has a huge multiplier effect just on the economy as a whole. And for communities that have been struggling economically, we've taken a major hit. And so we're finding ourselves as a chamber now wearing more hats. We can't just serve the needs of small businesses. We also have to look at the needs of nonprofits. We're looking at daycare providers. We've put together a special program for daycare centers who have now had to close their doors, many small operators, people who operate a daycare out of their homes who now, because of the lack of funding, have had to close their doors. And so we're finding ourselves wearing many hats because of the budget impasse.
Let me follow up with you for just a minute, Mara. So there's a segment of the population that we hear from time to time who say, you know, something's got to change, and we're at a standstill here because we've got two powers that are very stubborn and refuse to deal with one another yet. And so what if a few not-for-profits fall by the wayside? So what, you know, shouldn't college kids get a job if they don't have enough money to pay for their own education? You know, maybe we need not to have as many child care providers. You know, how do you respond to those kinds of comments?
Well, it really depends on the audience. I mean, the big thing, I think, is recognizing the overall economic impact that this is having. And we're, as a city, we're also dealing with this. So when your population is decreasing, which Illinois, we're clearly in the top tier in terms of population loss, but also the city of Chicago. We lost a couple of 100,000 residents between 2000 and 2010, and that number is increasing. So in the Austin community, for example, our population went down from around, it was almost 140,000 at its peak, and now we're around 80. And so there's a significant impact to revenue, and really, the ultimate issue of all of this is the structural issue, the fact that the state doesn't have a revenue plan that is commensurate with the needs of operating the state. The city of Chicago is in the same position. And so if people are leaving the state or leaving the city of Chicago, that's also revenue leaving the city of Chicago, leaving the state of Illinois. And so it only compounds the issue. So I think we have to think about this as, this is really about the health of our overall economy. It's not just the daycare providers, right? It's when that daycare closes that was the only affordable daycare in the area for some parents, and now the mother has to stop working so that she can take care of her children. There's an economic impact to that. And I think we have to really look at it in those terms by using those specific examples to humanize this, because these aren't widgets that we're talking about. These are people who have everyday lives, children. They want their children to go to school. They want to live in safe communities. They want to work. And we have to really humanize the issue.
Nellie, did you want to jump in and follow up on what Amara was saying?
Nellie, go ahead.
Sure. You know, Mara did a great job of describing, you know, what happens in the at-risk communities and just the, you know, dependence, you know, one sector, you know, with another and how that affects. But, you know, I run a homeless program in North Lawndale where our headquarters is located, so I see it face to face. You know, we are seeing people that are coming to a safe haven that were formerly middle class. You know, we're a lot of small business owners here. What happens if you own your own business and for some reason, you know, you lose a contract or you're not getting paid from the state of Illinois, or something happens in your life where, you know, things fall apart, you get sick or you get arrested, or, you know, DUIs, and all of a sudden, you know, everything just cascades and, you know, spirals out of control. A safe haven is a place that people come to that are in that situation, that have a place to start over. And as the budget has been affecting nonprofits all over the state, we've been feeling the brunt of seeing the people that have nowhere else to go showing up on our doorstep. And that looks like people just like us. And it's just, you know, it's very, very sad. No one plans to be homeless or in crisis, but, you know, you lose a job, it doesn't take a whole lot to run out of money and to, you know, find yourself in foreclosure or lose your, you know, lose your car, I mean, lose everything. So it's happening, it's real. I get, you know, emails and letters, and, you know, we don't have enough capacity for everything. What's unique about A Safe Haven, though, is we do get, you know, we are funded by the state, too, so we are affected. You know, but one thing that's given us a little bit of insulation is that we're not 100% dependent on the state. You know, we've done a little bit of our own legwork and making sure and seeing the writing on the wall, you know, back when Blagojevich started cutting budgets on human services back. So this didn't just happen overnight. You know, they've been cutting budgets to the bone. I mean, now we're to the marrow, right? And we're fortunate enough to see the writing on the wall and go after federal funding. Someone was talking about the fact that, you know, Illinois is last in everything. Well, Illinois is like third from the bottom on the return on investment from our federal dollars. So the state hasn't even done a very good job of bringing federal dollars into the state of Illinois to fund, you know, some of the things that we do need to finance, like Medicaid, and making sure that we have those matching dollars from the federal government when we deserve them. So, you know, I do want to say that, you know, the nonprofit sector, you know, when people come to a safe haven or any homeless organization, this is the last place that they can go to. There is no unemployment. There is nowhere else to go. So it's very sad and it's rampant.
Can I comment too? So, the issue is, or the question was too, how does this impact everybody, right? Is it just a few folks? Illinois has had a terrible reputation for an awful long time in terms of business friendliness, and all of those lists that we've talked about today, those lists have been relatively there. They've been there for quite some time. We have to stop the bleeding. We have to stop showing the rest of the country and the rest of the world, frankly, that we're a state that doesn't know how to manage its own finances and doesn't want to grow and isn't good to the people that are supporting the economy. And so when you've already got a damaged reputation and then you just pour fuel on the fire by having a budget impasse that lasts 8 months and nobody seems to be able to solve, you're doing a disservice to your state. And we really need our folks to understand that down in Springfield and at least to act like and to give the perception that they're really trying to solve this. I mean, Mercedes, I saw you sort of shake your head when you heard the comment about just another college student who should get a job. Why would a college student choose to go to an Illinois university right now when they could go somewhere else and feel that the funding they've been promised will be delivered? We've got a whole lot of rehabilitation work to do on our state. We can do it. I mean, we can do it. We can come back. Other states have come back, but we got to start right now. And I think that's the message that we'd like to send through the small business community, and I think the nonprofit community agrees, and I know our college students agree. This is a time right now to start fixing Illinois.
So let me put you on the spot, Elliot, and ask you a follow-up question, and then we'll never have another event together again. No.
I got to go.
So one of our speakers tonight said her state representative and her state senator have been really trying hard to push people to get something done. And not that I've grown cynical over the years, but I'm imagining that every state rep and state senator would say that if we had them with us here this evening. So what do we say back to them when they say that?
They haven't been trying hard enough. And I don't care who they are, and that goes for every legislator that's down there. They didn't have session in Springfield, I believe, until at least the House, maybe the last week in January. They haven't been working. If they've been working, we haven't seen it. If I had a crisis in my business, and everybody says government isn't business, I get that, but you know what? There are some similarities. If I had a crisis, I'd be working all the time trying to solve it. I'd have my partners in my office. I'd be having all my stakeholders in there, and I would be working nonstop. I'd get out the pizza. I'd pull out the whiteboard. I'd say, we're not leaving here until we get to the core and at least make an effort to solve the problem. If they've been trying, I don't know what they've been doing, but there's been no progress, none whatsoever. And getting a meeting every once in a while for the cameras or having President Obama come down and talk to them, that is not progress. Progress is working until you get the job done. And if you can't do it, just respectfully leave. There's a lot of other things that you can do with your time. Leave office,
is that what you're saying?
Yes, I don't think they're going to listen to me. And I want you all to stay. So my answer would be, if you're trying, you try a whole lot harder.
All right. So other suggestions for what we all can do together to help pressure our elected officials for some action? Anybody?
I think Elliot makes an excellent point. I mean, the reality is that we've had this governor for maybe a year, a little bit over a year. But the issues that we're facing have been long in the making. And I think it's very easy to pile everything onto the new governor. But the reality is that there's a lot of responsibility that has to be accepted on the part of individuals who have been representing the state of Illinois, representing their districts for decades in some cases. And so the opportunity that we have to see amid the challenge is the fact that we can actually do some things different. We can do things unlike we've ever done than before. So the problem is right now we've been sort of going along for 30, 40, 50 years. The refusal to pay into the pensions, for example, is not something that just started last year. That's something that's been ongoing. And so we have to be honest about the root of the issues that we're facing as a state. Now, the opportunity that I see with this governor, however anyone feels about him, is do we take this chance to drastically move in a different direction as a state? Now, what I've seen is a lot of the legislators that say they've been fighting and they've been working in all of this have in the past been unwilling to break away from the status quo. In fact, they've willingly gone along with the status quo. And I think that needs to be called out. And that's something that I believe everyone in here can do, that it's not enough to simply say, oh, well, they're down there in Springfield working on our behalf. Because sometimes if you're not in Springfield with them, and I don't know how many of you have gone down to Springfield to see what happens, if you're not there, how do you even know what they're saying behind closed doors? Because it's easier to go along as we've been doing, and it's easier to blame the governor and absolve yourself of any responsibility for the current state of things. So if we're gonna have this conversation, I think it needs to be an honest conversation. And I think it starts with holding every elected official accountable, not just for what's happened in the last year, but for what's happened the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years that have caused us to be where we are today. And so to me, it means engaging our representatives, no matter who your representative is, to say, what are you specifically doing? Okay, we know you don't like the governor, or maybe they do like the governor. Besides that, what are you doing as my advocate? What have you done in the past? Because I think we should know that. But what are you doing presently to be a part of the solution? Not just complaining about the problem that we have in the state of Illinois, but what tangibly are you doing to be a part of the solution? And that's something that everyone in this room can do.
Nellie wants to jump in here. You can applaud.
Thank you. I'm with Amara on this. I think that, we've got to really take not only our elected officials to task and holding them accountable, but also I think even ourselves. I'm surprised this isn't a standing room only room. I'm sure there's a lot of people on the cameras, but I think that, the fact that we've been admittedly, a little complacent, and just assuming that people are making really good decisions on our behalf. But like I said, when we started looking at this 21 years ago, we noticed that there was a lot of money going into corrections. We're building a lot of prisons. We noticed a lot of people were drug and alcohol addicts, and we thought they shouldn't be in prison. They should be getting help. So today, there was actually an ACLU report that got released, a bipartisan report that showed that there is 90%, there was a poll, Republicans and Democrats, 90% support for criminal justice reform. And if you go through the numbers, a Pew report came out a few years ago, they showed that we spend $51 billion as a nation on just running prisons, and we know 70 or 80% of those people are drug and, alcohol impacted. And the rate of recidivism nationally is like 70%. So of course, a drug or alcoholic comes out, the first thing they're gonna do is gonna drink and recidivate and end up right back in the system. Well, this is costing, just the rate of recidivism alone, right, is filling up 70% of our prisons. If we reduce that number by just 10%, then we're saving over $676 million, something like that. So this is something we can agree on. I think the legislators, if they got together in the room, they looked at the criminal justice, the governor came out with this as a priority. Well, let's get moving on that, and let's look at what are the best practices that are happening out there that we can get behind, not necessarily needing to create something new. We've been doing it for 21 years. And let me tell you, the vast majority of people that come through our program, and I'm sure a lot of other programs that work with the reentry population, end up getting their lives back on track, getting the treatment that they need, getting jobs, getting themselves in a situation that can support themselves and their families. And guess what? We were cut 100% on that budget. And there wasn't an ounce of resistance from the community. The people that we represent aren't necessarily people that have a PAC or people that have, people that go out and rally for them. You don't see that. Homeless people are just trying to figure out where they're going to get the next meal from, So, but does it affect all of us? Yes, it does, because we're paying a lot more than we should be for services that we can be redirecting and allocating in a way that makes the most sense, and at the end of the day, takes care of people, which is our most precious resource.
So, thank you, Nellie. So we have David from the Chicago Southland Chamber in the audience today. We've got folks from the GOA. We've got lots of different business organizations who are involved. We have college students. We have nonprofits. We have media. And the real question is, you said, what can be done? And that really depends on whether we're at an inflection point right now. You know, whether or not everyday business owners, everyday college students, nonprofits, people who are working in this economy are really ready to try to make a difference. Because we have the most critical mass out of anybody in this state. People talk about other special interest groups. They may talk about trial attorneys. They may talk about unions. I'm not casting aspirations on anybody. Believe me, I have friends in all of those places. They may be talking about other groups. But small business, the small business community, the people that rely on the small business community, that is your biggest, largest, greatest critical mass in the state of Illinois. And if we all stood up and got a little nasty and got serious about trying to make reforms, and I mean nasty in a good way, it's time to make our voices heard. I mean, if we play politics, we will consistently lose. I don't mean nasty by calling people names. I mean nasty by calling people out for not doing their job. We can make a difference because there's a lot more people in the small business community than there are legislators in Springfield. We just have to make sure that they hear us. And the only way that's going to happen is if we get loud and we get strong. If that happens, I think everything can change.
All right. Well, that's a great place to wrap up this segment of our program and ask you to hand your questions and comments over to Matt.
And remember, these are for anybody who spoke.
Right. And while we're collecting questions, why don't we remind everybody who's watching online and here that we want to tweet and post on Facebook and use any other social media channel we can find with the hashtag ILBudgetNow, or you can text the word reboot to, that number again is 27, I feel like I'm running a telethon, 27126. Text reboot to 27126, and that will take you to our budget impasse sound off page where you can, in a couple clicks, reach out to your state rep, your state senator, the governor, and the 4 legislative leaders. Don't be too surprised if you don't hear back from many of them. When I've used this myself lately, I've only heard back from Senate Republican leader Christine Radonio. So please feel free to follow it up with phone calls and other emails and show up at their district offices. What other brainstorms can we toss out there to take action and put pressure on these guys? Have we all talked to our friends and families and neighbors? Because I think a lot of us just get so caught up in our day-to-day lives and are so busy that unless it hits us in a very personal way, it seems still to be a far-off thing, and we've got to bring it home for people.
Oh, you know, and we could also, what the SBAC has started doing is, you know, people campaign all the time for candidates. How about campaigning for an idea? Like campaigning for the idea of passing a responsible budget and making the reforms that are necessary. We've canvassed. We'd like to go door to door. I mean, we'd like to run a commercial in a legislator's district, which talks about the fact that we really need them to do their job. We can take all of that and use those techniques and really campaign for the small business community and for the Illinois economy. And I think that's a way that we can be disruptive and really make a difference.
Matt, are you ready with some questions and comments?
We have a few.
Turn your microphone on, sir.
1 sec.
We're live
The
streaming.
first one is probably one that I could probably answer this because it has a lot to do with what we write about at Reboot Illinois. And the question is businesses, it also has to do with what Mark had said about the $32 billion that we're taking in versus the $38 million we're going to spend. The question is businesses and residents are still paying taxes, so where is that money going or sitting right now if it's not being paid out? And the answer is it is being paid out, and we are spending at a rate that far exceeds the amount that we're coming in. The reason it's still going out is because There have been, groups have gone to court to make sure that certain things are paid, even though there's not a budget to authorize them. And the net effect of that is we're spending about 90% of what we were spending in fiscal year 2015, but we're going to have a lot less income tax revenue to pay for that. And it's,
Because
and-
the
and-
income tax rate went down
Exactly.
is the reason why we're going to have a lot less to pay for
And
last year.
And one other thing that I should add to what Mark said, and going also to Mercedes' point, that $6 billion that we're going to be short at the end of this year at the rate we're spending, that doesn't include whatever they're going to end up budgeting for higher education. So it's going to be a lot higher than that. That's just the $6 billion that we are spending now. So your taxes they're being spent quite well, quite efficiently and quickly. Okay. Question number one for the panel. While everyone doesn't agree with everything the governor's done, everyone agrees with building businesses, especially small ones. What has SBAC done to work with the governor?
I guess I should take that one. We've met with the governor. You know, I believe in the governor's core. He's got, in his mind, the best interests of Illinois at heart. He's got a reform, a reform package, and some of that makes absolute sense. Some of it probably doesn't need to be part of a budget negotiation right now. So we've worked with Republicans, we've worked with Democrats, we've talked with Governor Rauner. I'll give you a really good example. Workers' compensation reform is on Governor Rauner's agenda. And Governor Rauner has a workers' compensation reform proposal that would have a 50% threshold in order for somebody to recover workers' compensation benefits. Without getting into the weeds, that's the law in 4 states. And it's something that will never, ever pass in the state of Illinois. Illinois' system is as follows. If you have a pre-existing injury and your workers' compensation injury, your injury causes 0.2% of that condition to worsen, the insurer, the employer, is responsible for 100% of that injury. That makes absolutely no sense. The SBAC, with some of our partners, like the National Federation, like the Federation of Women's Contractors, put forth a proposal that would apportion causation in a percentage that reflects the actual cause of the injury. So if the injury was 45% of the cause of your current condition, the insurer would pay 45% of the injury. Republicans and Democrats have both told us that that makes sense. We know it makes sense, but we can't get either a Democrat or a Republican to sponsor that bill. That's the problem. So we want to work with the governor, and we also want to work with Democratic legislators, but they have to be willing to compromise.
Okay. Next question. When the last income tax increase occurred, the state continued to run a significant deficit, increased expenditures, and increased the amount of unpaid bills. Why should we trust that another income tax increase will do any good?
Who wants to take that one? All right, here's Amara.
I mean, I'm just speaking as myself. So
Not representing the Austin Chamber.
Right, at least for this snippet. So one of the big issues, I mean, there's a revenue issue, but it's also an efficiency issue. We have at the city level, at the state level, we've just been horribly inefficient. Now, what causes inefficiency? Corruption is one thing that causes inefficiency. The other is simply not accurately assessing the needs that are what's necessary to run government. And so at what point have our legislators and has our state willingly had the existential conversation about what it takes to efficiently run the state of Illinois? Unfortunately, the existential conversation gets sidetracked by the political conversation. So when it comes to the tax rate, who's willing to actually say, oh, maybe we need to raise taxes? Well, no one wants to touch that because it's politically detrimental. Right? But if we're honest, then we should understand, well, what does it actually take to run the state of Illinois efficiently? And that should supersede the political I guess, the political underpinnings of a lot of the decision-making that happens in the state of Illinois. I think the unwillingness to do that causes the distrust. Who wants to pour water in a bucket that has a hole in it? And that perception exists not just for the state of Illinois, but it also exists for the city of Chicago. Well, why are we paying more taxes when I'm not seeing the benefits in my services? My streets still have potholes, my garbage still hasn't been picked up on time, my street lights are out, so but then you want me to come and pay additional taxes? And I think it's a legitimate question and one that our legislators should have to answer.
Okay.
No, well, here, I'll say something real fast and give it to you. You know, taxes are going to go up. Governor Rauner says taxes are going to go up. The Democrats say taxes are going to go up. They're going up. The question is what structural reforms are made when those taxes go up to change the dynamic in Illinois and to stop the bleeding. And that's what we have to be demanding. I mean, here's the problem. Every day we spend over $30 million more than we take in, taxes are going up more. So every day this budget crisis goes on and the state is ordered by court order to spend money, the tax increase is going to be more and more and more. So, you know, the day of reckoning is coming, but I believe as business owners, as stewards of the economy, we have to hold our politicians to a higher standard and make sure that the money is well spent. Because if we don't, we're going to be facing the exact same crisis at some point in the future.
Well, if you start to see plans for cutting expenses, and you've done everything you could, as a government to cut expenses, I think that's the time to talk about the idea of raising taxes. But right now, I know that reallocating some of the resources that we do have, that we are taking in, would be a great start in terms of really looking at the landscape. As I mentioned with the correction example, our rate of recidivism since we started doing ex-offenders coming through our program is in the teens, which is dramatically lower than what we see the state doing. So it is, I think, incumbent on us to not only ask for, the budget to pass, but also to make sure that it's being backed up with a plan where we're really looking at the expenses in terms of corrections and, all the other social services that we pay for, and making sure that we are getting a true return on our investment, most of all, a true return on investment for the people that we're trying to help in terms of getting them back on their feet. I just want to mention, with the homeless population that we had, almost 4,500 people last year that went through our program, we got almost over 1,000 of those people jobs, about 900 of them plus were children, but they made $22 million. If you multiply, the multiplier is the cost of someone in the system that's homeless is actually about 7 times greater than the money that we spend. Does that make sense? So for every dollar we spend on helping them, we actually get a $7 return. So there are huge opportunities to really rethink the allocation of our resources in a way that's going to get everybody what they need.
Yeah, and now that Nellie's brought that up, it's a great point. We have to look at the tax code as a whole. I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time. Special tax breaks that go to large companies trying to leave the state, that's revenue that's lost from the state that wind up being borne on the backs of regular people and small businesses. We have to look at that. We have to look at the revenue that can be generated by a healthy business environment, the revenue that can be generated by college kids that actually want to stay in Illinois and work in this state, because when they leave, we lose that revenue. So I think we have to look at it from all sides, not just the income tax, but also having a healthy environment in Illinois where we can generate more revenue.
We lose the revenue, we lose the brain power. We've gone over more than a year now without having a discussion about any efficiencies in government. Over a year where we haven't had any discussion about changes we might make to our tax structure in Illinois. And we're just wasting time. What else do you have for us, Matt, on that happy note?
There was a question, and it was about what about a ballot initiative to solve any of these problems. And just for clarity, the Illinois Constitution really limits what you can do through ballot initiatives in Illinois. And it's limited to these citizen initiatives. You can only change the form and structure of the General Assembly. Right now, there is a ballot initiative going on for legislative redistricting, and I actually think that's got a pretty good shot at making it onto the ballot. they tried to do, Bruce Rauner tried to back a term limits ballot initiative in November 2014, but the Supreme Court tossed that one out. So that can only happen through the legislature. But taxes, budget, all this other stuff, you can't do that by a citizen initiative in Illinois. It's not like, you know, in California they do them for everything, but Illinois we're very restricted on ballot initiatives. So that was one question. The next one is most of the talk tonight has been about funding or lack of funding. What can be done? No one wants to take the hit. So if where are we going to make the cuts? The toughest question.
I'll try to answer this one. No one wants to take the hit, and that's absolutely true, which is why we hear that we're not going to see any sort of action or compromise until after the November election, because certainly nobody wants to vote for a tax increase right before they run for re-election, and nobody wants to make controversial votes on prison reform right before an election. But you know, that's a really easy way out for political leaders who are elected to make these tough decisions, especially when you consider that very few of them have competitive districts and competitive races. So one of our speakers tonight talked about redistricting reform. As Matt mentioned, there is another attempt to get something about that onto the ballot. It's being promoted by a group of citizens and volunteers and business leaders and Democrats and Republicans. It's called mapamendment.org. That's another thing that I would encourage all of you to talk to your family and friends and neighbors about. The fact of the matter is that very few of these state representative and state senate seats are truly competitive because the districts have been drawn by whichever party gets to draw them to protect as many incumbents as possible. So as President Obama said in the House chamber today, the politicians are picking their voters. The voters are not picking their politicians. Think about that. That's exactly what happens. So at the very birthplace of political geography in Illinois, your right has been taken from you. It's rigged. And we need to all fight to stop that as well. That's my soapbox for this evening. Yes, Matt, what else you got?
I'm not sure who would be best to answer this one, but it's a multi-part question that I'll condense to two parts. Is the budget impasse legal? Can legislators and the governor be held accountable? And it concludes, in light of Governor Rauner's obstinacy, well, that's politically subjective there, and lack of political experience, will a businessman be elected again to an important government position?
Wow.
Who wants to take
that? Good questions. You do, Matt.
Well, it is legal because this is what you do. You fight until you get a budget. The General Assembly and the legislature have to come up with a budget, so however long it takes.
But perhaps whoever wrote that was, they are in Illinois law supposed to have a budget in place by July 1st. So in that regard, it's illegal because they're not following the law, their own law.
Right.
But
who's going
to sue them?
That's it. Yeah, it's not legal. But the question is who's going to enforce that and who's going to sue, and that's the answer is nobody. So hence we have no budget for 8 months.
And Elliot, you'd probably be in a better position to comment on this, but there's a lot of, I've heard this a lot, the Constitution says you have to pass a balanced budget. You can't pass a budget that spends more than you're going to take in. Well, clearly that happened for the fiscal 2015 budget. But the Constitution, Governor Rauner likes to say that the legislature gave him an unconstitutional budget. But what it really says is quite a bit different. The Constitution says you guys have to come together and pass this. So, but I've always been curious how it is that they did do that in fiscal year 2015. What's the deal on that?
Well, you know, I'll be totally honest with you. I don't know how they did that. I'm not sure that anybody does. Maybe. What was that?
Yeah.
Says, thank you, Mark. They rated special funds. So, no, it's not. And, you know, to the earlier question of what would you cut, right? I think that was a question, what would you cut? I would consider it more of an investment. I think people in Illinois would invest in the state if they felt that their leaders were really looking to solve the sort of problems that Mark was talking about earlier and that Steve and Vic and Jason and everybody have brought up. It's an investment, but you got to trust the people you're investing the money in. So I think people would share the sacrifice. I really do, if they felt confident that their government would do the job for them. I think people would take those cuts. It would hurt, but they would take them if there was a light at the end of the tunnel. Right now, we just don't see that light.
All right. Anything else, Matt?
Well, if our legislators are not working, why are they getting paid?
That's a fabulous question.
I don't know. Just, why don't we let somebody out there want to? Can we?
I mean, it went to court over this.
Yes.
Okay? And that's why they're getting paid. Originally, nobody from the state was going to get paid, but they went to court and they won, saying that you have to pay all state employees, and that's why all our money continues to go out the door because we're paying all these employees.
And
the state of Illinois is the largest employer in the entire state. That's wrong.
And to add to that, our lawmakers will get paid whether there's a budget or not. They don't even have to go to court because they wrote their own continuing appropriation. So they don't even need a budget to authorize their salaries. So let that sink in.
Yeah, but we could fire them. You know that. I mean, we're their boss. So they could get paid. We could go to the ballot box and we could fire our legislators for not doing their jobs. So ultimately, we do have that power still in the back pocket.
One more question. Someone asks, can you, Reboot and SBAC, et cetera, help produce some more specific requests to send to Springfield, like Sound Off, along the lines of independent maps, following constitutional guidelines, those types of things. What other specific things can people bring up if they're going to use our Sound Off, or if they're going to call their legislator? What should they be asking about?
Well, yes, we actually have one of our items in Sound Off does deal with redistricting reform, and it's not, lawmakers are never going to approve that because it would be risking their careers. So it really is something that has to come from a citizen initiative, but we have created a Sound Off item about that to help people let their lawmakers know that they want it and that they should be supportive of it, and the thinking being that if enough of us put pressure on them and made it very clear that a vast majority of us believed in that, then that makes it very difficult for them to block it or to let Mike Madigan block it, who blocked it the last time. So I'm not speaking in a partisan fashion. It's a fact. If any of you have other suggestions for things that you'd like to see on Sound Off, please let us know. We're happy to do that. We've got, we might have taken it down, but we had something up on workers' comp at one point. We've got a variety of items, and we very specifically, at Matt's great suggestion this year, created one that simply says message from a concerned constituent, and you can use it to write your own email in the box and send it off. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd just like to say first, thank you for all of this. But it is listening to Nellie and Amar and Ellie and everybody. Part of the problem, I think, is that right now we're speaking with one voice at a time. Each of us is sending a letter. Each of us is making a phone call. And the voice is getting lost because it's easy for one voice at a time not to be heard and to be ignored. But if 10,000 voices at one time marched in Springfield, the 10,000 small business owners and teachers and not-for-profit workers and moms and dads and policemen and firemen and everyone else who was impacted by this went to Springfield, 10,000 of us, and demanded that something be done. And I don't think the issue is lack of ideas, because there's lots of them. The issue right now is a lack of will on the part of two people in particular, but those two people in particular also work for the other people who sit in Springfield. And if 10,000 of us appeared there one day marching and yelling and complaining, I think we could get something done. They would have to listen to us.
Thank you. Are we good
Yeah.
with the questions? It's about time to wrap it up. Elliot?
All right, all right. So Scott made a great point, and I'm in charge to wrap this up. First of all, thank you to everybody, and thank you to Drew, who's handled our live stream. Give him a round of applause.
Thanks, Drew.
I just hope it came out okay, Drew, so we're going to find out. I would settle for 10,000 people contacting their legislators. It would be great if we all went to Springfield, but I would just encourage everybody to get engaged, get in the fight. We need Illinois to work for everybody, and I'd like to thank everybody who spoke today. Nellie, Myra, thank you for your insight. Reboot is out there fighting every day, writing stories, publishing stories about how this state can revive itself. Start working for the people that it's supposed to, its citizens. So thank you all, and thanks for coming out tonight. Thank everybody for watching.
Thank you.